For more content on today's episode, make sure you check out the Al Nicoletti YouTube channel under Al Nicoletti, the Facebook business page and the personal page under Al Nicoletti, and the Al Nicoletti Show, which is on iTunes and Spotify. You can check out all the amazing past guests that have been on the show. It's going to be a great season next year. We already got the whole lineup coming. But before we finish it off, I have 2 more episodes with these incredible people. And on the episode today, you're going to love the guest. So we're going to dive in and make sure you stay tuned all the way till the end because we're going to hear all about rehab. Hey, everybody. My name's Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their community that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate and going a little bit beyond that on how you can take your company to the next level. So before we introduce the guest today, I just wanted to say happy Veterans Day. Thank you to all that have served for our country, that are serving, have served. Thank you. We appreciate it. And of course, you know, it's something to celebrate and something amazing with veterans. We want to thank everybody. So thank you again. And shout out to Nate Hare at New View Trust. New View, they've been on the show. Nate's company, they're doing a big conference in January 6th and 7th. So make sure you check it out. It's going to be in Orlando, big conference. And they're going to make it a big one. I think they said like 300, 400 people there. So we have it on the bottom there, the New View Annual Investor Retreat. So check that out. Nate, you're the man. New View, self-directed IRAs. Make sure you check out that episode. It was on the Al Nicoletti Show. So on the show today, my guest is Cameron Gaskill. Cameron is the real deal rehabber. We're going to talk about everything rehab, going from start to finish, what he was doing before real estate, how he even got into it, and how he's crushing the market today, and why it is so important to have the right contractor and the rehab team when you're buying these properties that are dilapidated. They need that work that needs to be done in order to flip it and fix it and to get an end buyer to sell it out on the end. He's going to dive in on all that. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show. Cameron, so happy I get to have you on my show. We've been talking about this for like the past couple months. I was like, I got to have Cameron on the show. I got to have that like rehabber, the guy that comes in that talks about the niche in rehabbing. So Cameron, welcome.
Thanks for having me out. Appreciate it. I know it's been a while. We've talked about it. So we finally made it happen. We had some difficulty and we got through it just in time. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And you're from Suncoast Renovations and Designs, Inc. That is your company. Cameron, tell everybody before we get into all the rehabbing, how did you even get into rehabbing? What were you doing before real estate? How did you get here?
Well, to get into it, you got to go way back. As I was a child, my father was a contractor. So I used to get in trouble a lot. And so when I did, I got grounded and had to spend summers with my dad in construction and stuff like that. So that's where it all really started. I gained a little bit of knowledge with that. And then my dad did remodeling. I got into framing out of high school. Probably 3 years after I graduated high school, I started my own framing company. Had that for about 4 years. And then moved out west, out to Phoenix, Arizona, and finished college out there and got out of the framing and got into what I thought I was going to get into was architectural drafting and design, which is what I got my degree in. And I ended up in more of an engineering job where I was doing floor trusses, roof trusses, beams, and calculations, stuff like that. So I started drawing plans and roof trusses and designing that stuff for probably about 8 years. I did that. That would have brought me right around the beginning of the 2000s when the housing market, like right before it started to kind of crash. Well, I got let go from my job and I had just gotten into real estate investing because I was kind of going nowhere. I was living check by check and just really struggling through life and wanted to do something. And, you know, I read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book and, you know, a bunch of other things that everybody reads and wanted to do something. So, I had just started flipping my first house or two, doing everything the wrong way, didn't really know what was going on. And when I got laid off, I decided to just flip houses only. And everybody said I was crazy because this was in like 06. And what I was doing is I just could only flip one at a time because I didn't have any money. And so in between flips, to try to make a couple bucks, I would do some side work, construction wise. And that's what led me into owning Suncoast Renovations, it was an accident. It was never something I was trying to do. The jobs got bigger, and instead of just hanging a door and tiling a kitchen, it became rehabbing an entire house for people. And then it was multiple houses, and so we ended up with multiple crews, and the company kind of grew from there. Not too long after that, I discovered Jack's Ria, which is where I learned to rub shoulders with all the right people and learned what I was doing wrong and stuff. Met people like you, and things just took off after that point because I really got myself engaged. I got myself involved, and just it was all about helping as many people as I can, and they were helping me at the same time, and then everything just sort of took off after that.
Amazing. I mean, it's an incredible story because you got this company now that you've been really running with everything. So, you got some fans out there, Cameron. Henry and Jelly, he's watching right now.
Yeah.
Henry, what's going on? I know Henry's all about the fix and flip rehabbing when it comes to real estate. So, Henry, thanks for watching. And I know everybody loves watching Cameron. Cameron's a speaker. He loves presenting. So, Cameron, talk to us about the rehab process, because that's what you're really in, right? You're doing all the rehabbing. So
Right.
I don't do that, right? I'm not in that world. Somebody buys a piece of property. Maybe it needs that kind of rehab. What are the first things you're thinking if you want to fix and flip it? Whether it's costs, whether it's materials, whether it's worth doing, passing off and saying, no, let somebody else handle that. It's too much involved, whether you're going to get your money back out of it. What's the first thing I'm thinking when I go to that property? I'm like, okay, I want to fix and flip it. Where do we start?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question, because when you're a beginner, it's so much different than when you're not a beginner, and there's all these pitfalls that people fall in when they're just getting started. But for me, when I go to a property, I already know a couple of things. One, I know how much I can buy it for, or at least how much they want. I know how much it's going to be worth when I fix it up. I already know that. The only thing I need to know to figure out whether it's a good deal is how much is the rehab going to cost. So when I go there, that is my sole purpose, is to figure out what is the rehab going to cost. And people will say, well, because you're a contractor, you can do that. And it's not true. Anybody can do it. I send my wife out a lot of times because I'm just busy. I've taught her how to walk a house in pretty much about 10 minutes. She can tell me what the rehab is. And if she says it's good, we buy it. But that is the sole purpose of that walkthrough, is to find out what is the rehab going to be approximately, and then do the math. And then before I leave the property, I'm making an offer on that house, or I'm declining, if I want to buy it or not. But I don't do any more of this like a lot of the beginners. You go look at it and you go home, you think about it, you crunch the numbers. By then, especially in this market right now, you've lost the deal. You need to be very quick.
So tell us about that rehab process, though. Like, what are you looking for? Like, all about rehab. So like, what are you doing when you're first starting? Like, talk to us about that.
So it depends. It could be if it's a house that's lived in, I don't get to do as good and thorough of a walkthrough that I would like. I don't like digging through people's stuff if it's a little bit uncomfortable. So I just try to look at the major components, whether that's the electrical, the HVAC, the roof, the windows, what kind of flooring, if the condition of the house is bad, most of the stuff that you're going to find are going to be bad. So you don't have to dig too far. You really just want to know, what are your major components and how much are those things going to cost? Do I need a new AC, or can I leave the one that's in there? Do I need new windows, or are they okay? Am I going to do an electrical upgrade or a panel change out? And I personally have a sheet that it's like a checklist, and I just check everything off or fill in quantities. And when I'm done, it formulates what my rehab number is going to be. That's something that I created for myself, that I use. And that's the stuff that I let, like, my students or my wife, that, they have that kind of stuff too. And what that does is that helps you to not miss anything. Because if you try to tell somebody, or they go to a class, a seminar, and they learn it, and then they go to it and you say, oh, what kind of wiring is it? And they're like, oh, I forgot to check that. Or, how old's the AC? And they go, I didn't even notice. I didn't look into that. And those are big ticket items that I find a lot of the beginners will miss. So you want to try to have some kind of checklist for yourself that will help you catch all those big things that you need to look at.
Yeah. Do you have like a program or like that kind of checklist that helps
Yeah.
people when they're coming across it? Or I guess better yet, like do you help JV with other new investors that are trying to get in the fix and flip game that you can help them?
Sure. Yeah, we have a home study course that I've created that helps people. We since COVID, we really haven't done any of these seminars and boot camps and stuff like we used to. That's something that in 2022 I'm going to start ramping up again. We do mentoring as well. Very little mentoring since COVID started, but that's something that we're also going to ramp up as well to try to help people out. So yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that we do to help people because it's really hard to just explain it to somebody and then they go out and do it right because every house is different. It's not difficult. It's very easy, but when you don't know what you don't know, it seems to be. I shouldn't even say difficult. It's overwhelming. That's the part that really they have to get over. Is a kitchen's a kitchen. A bathroom's a bathroom. If you're off in the price, it's not going to be by much. I mean, we're out here trying to make $20,000-$30,000 on profit. If I miscalculate something by $1,000, $2,000, even $5,000, it's not the end of the world. And a lot of people kind of get hung up on that if they don't know the numbers and they can't do it. And it's not true. You actually learn from your mistakes. So go out there, do the best you can. And then if you bid it wrong, you'll know. And then you learn on the next one and you bid it correctly from then on. So it's not that
Yeah.
hard.
You have some big fans. D Dockery. D, thank you so much for watching. She said, one thing I learned from Cameron, when you flip a house, get it at a good discount to be able to afford your tradesman instead of doing the work yourself. You find out real quick that you're not a painter, plumber, tile installer. You will always do it slower than the trade professionals.
100%.
Look at that.
100%. And I learned that through my own experience, believe it or not. So I own a construction company. I can tile a floor by myself. I can paint a wall by myself. I can frame walls. I can do anything myself without any help. I'm not going to do any of that. Even though I own the construction company, it's no different than if I hired somebody else to do it. I don't want to do it. I could save money if I told my guys to go do another job and I'll paint my own rehabs and stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm not really making any extra money. A good quick way to put it is, how much could I pay somebody to do the thing that I'm doing right now? If I can pay somebody, say $10, $15, $20 an hour to do the thing that I'm doing, then that's what I'm valuing my own time at. I'm worth a lot more than that. So I'm not going to do a job that I could pay somebody $15, $20 an hour to do. I'm going to pay somebody 15 hours to do that so I can go find a deal that's going to make $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. That's where my value is at. And so in the beginning, people they have a hard time not doing that. They want to do it themselves. Some people are very good at it. Some people like to manage their own jobs. I know Henry, we have a job for Henry right now, and Henry's handling a lot of the stuff himself, but Henry's not a newbie. Henry knows what he's doing. So he might say, hey, I'm going to take care of the plumber, electrician, roofer, and all that. I need you to come in and do the demo, the framing, put up some trim. And then he has me doing a certain amount of things, but he understands the process. Now, is it taking time away from Henry to do that? Sure it is, but that's something that he chooses to do. And I know a lot of other investors that are the same way. But there's some investors that say, I don't want to deal with it because I don't understand it. I don't know when the next trade's supposed to come in, and I don't want to know when. So that's where it helps to have somebody like us who's more turnkey, where we could come in and just do the whole thing for them.
Yeah, Henry also commented and he said, I have another for you to bid, Cameron, in Nassau County. More to come. Look at that. I love it.
Perfect.
Great, Henry.
We're ready to go.
And yeah, and Henry said, you have to capitalize on the highest and best use of your time. Mine is finding and buying deals.
Yep.
So, like tell us, like, Cameron, is it about the area that you're buying that property and then evaluating whether the rehab on that is worth it? Like, what are the factors that go into going into a rehab and whether it's worth it? Like, again, if I tomorrow woke up and said, hey, Cameron, I want to be a fix and flipper, right? Like, I want to do what you're doing. Like, I wouldn't have a clue where to start. So what are you thinking about when you're first starting that kind of stuff?
Okay, so I want to touch on one thing that most new people think that they have to start off with, and that's the money. I don't have any money, and I got to find somebody with money. Could not be further from the truth. The money is the easiest thing to find. People seem to think that they have to find somebody that's going to lend them money, and that's not what the lender's doing. The lender is lending money on a property. If you don't have a property, then what are they lending? What are you asking somebody? If I walk up to a lender and say, I'd like to flip a house, will you loan me money if I find one? That's a very hard answer to get back. But if I tell them I have a property that I bought for 100,000, it's going to be worth 200, but I only have to put 30,000 into it. Will you loan money on that? It's much easier for somebody to say yes, and they will say yes. And if they don't, another investor, flipper, partner would do it like me. I would do it with somebody if that was the case. But it's very, very easy to find money. That's the first thing that people have to kind of overcome. But what you're getting at is like where to find houses and stuff. You want to be in a retail area. I want to be in a neighborhood where people buy houses. If I'm in a neighborhood where everybody that lives in these houses rent, it's going to be very hard to sell that house unless my market is I'm trying to sell to a landlord. Companies like JWB, they got that market nailed down. They can do that. They know they have probably every landlord out there that wants to buy houses on their list. So they could do that. I don't. That's not my niche. So it wouldn't fit me as well as it fits them. So figure out what you're good at or figure out what you like and learn it. It's just like going to college, high school, anything else. You don't just go to class the first day and then you know everything and can get, past the class. You have got to learn it. So you might go into this business going, I'm really good at construction. I know all about that, but I don't know anything about managing a construction job, or I don't know anything about how to do a closing or title companies, insurance. I don't know anything about that. Well, then learn it, study it, go to classes and figure it out. But don't depend on everybody else to figure it out for you. There is some learning to this, and the more time you put into it, the more money you're going to make. It's just like anything else.
I think even after you're done with the class, you still don't know
I don't know any. I feel like I don't know anything. Every time I go out, somebody is doing something that I've never heard about. I don't understand, and I want to know more. Or they make money on a deal that I thought had no shot at making money. I mean, it's pretty incredible how creative people can get in real estate, and that's what's so nice about it. It's not X, Y, Z, and that's it. There's so many ways to skin a cat in real estate. You can make money in all different ways.
So before we get to some stories that I'm sure you have some real success stories on spreads that you have done on the fix and flipping, how do you find the right, like Dee was talking about, how do you make sure you find the right painter, the plumber, the tile installer, the people that are going to work, right? Like you could post the job and are people actually going to show up and actually do the work? Like how, after all the years that you've been doing this, how do you know that drive in that person and that they're going to be dependable and reliable?
You don't. That's the truth. You don't know what you're going to get. The best way to find somebody though is a referral. If you're new and you don't know the inner circles of people, because we could sit here, me and you could name off the who's who in the town who's doing this stuff. We all probably use the same people. There's a reason for that. When you're kind of trying to step into that circle, you've got to learn that. And it could be trial and error. So you don't know who the best contractor is, the best attorney is, or who the best real estate closing. There's all this stuff that you've got to kind of build your team. It's one of the first things I teach when I do these seminars is you've got to learn how to build your team. And that team will always be evolving. I don't care if you do this for 30 years. It'll never, ever stop evolving. People that are great aren't great later on for whatever reason. Some people go out of business. You expand and need more of the people that you had already. You might need more than one contractor. You might need more than one title company or whatever. So I like to have a few of all those things because I don't want to get told I can't get to it right now. I'm too busy. I'll just go to the next, whoever it is that I have. But I do have certain things that are my core group of people that I use, and I won't ever deviate from that, unless I really have to, but I have no plans on it. But how I can't really say how to build it. That's going to be trial and error. I would start off with asking people who really don't ask somebody, what do you think a good painter is? Find somebody who actually uses who has a lot of painting done. And who do you keep using? Finding somebody who said, I used a painter once and his name was Joe and he was really good. That's not necessarily a great painter. But if you have somebody who says, I've rehabbed, 200 houses and this is who's painted most of them, probably going to be a pretty good painter. So just go with the referrals, try to find out who other people are using.
Yeah, ask around. You can post on the Yellowbird pages, right? You post
Oh,
on people's pages, or and just ask the people that are doing it. I've seen people post comments that it's just so hard to find those right people. They don't show up on the job site, or they showed up, now they want to get paid. They haven't even done the work. So there's so many factors that go into it. So talk to us about some success stories. I know you were at Jack's Ria talking about a deal that you had just done that was like a great spread. You had, I don't know what exactly was involved with the rehab, but talk to us about some of these success stories that you have had with rehabbing and how it's led to even more growth and bigger relationships with people.
yeah, and let me go back a little bit, because for anybody who's listening to this that maybe isn't super experienced or whatever, when I first started going to these real estate group meetings and stuff, and listening to speakers at the front of the room speak about how much money they made and how much they taught somebody else how to make all this money, my wife and I used to go to these, and we would sit at the back of the room and just say, "Bull crap." We didn't believe any of it, because we'd already been doing it for a couple of years, and we didn't have any huge checks. We didn't have anything that was like, wow, that was pretty amazing that happened. They were just kind of like, they were okay deals, made some money. And we just thought it was kind of not really true. 15 years later, now that I've been doing this, like you said, I do have lots of cool stories about things that have happened. And for anybody out there that is kind of newer, you will have your stories eventually. Okay. You're not your first deal. I mean, unlike the one that when we did that you saw at Jack's Rita, she made $180,000 on that deal. I think that was like her second deal or something like that. I mean, that's incredible. I've never made 180 on one flip. So, I mean, great for that she was able to do that. But people have to understand that that's not always going to happen. And it may never happen, but you might make 100 on a deal. You might make 80 on a deal. And when's that going to happen? Nobody can answer that question. The good deals do come. It's just, to be honest with you, the more you do, the more people you know, the more shoulders you're rubbing, the more the cool deals fall into your lap. No good deal falls into your lap when nobody has any idea who you are, or what you're looking for, that you're even out there. So it takes time. So I want to start off with that you don't get these great deals right off, in the beginning. But some cool things that have happened to me is, somebody had told me that I should start doing mail marketing, direct mail marketing. And I was kind of against it, because it does cost more than most advertising, and it takes the most amount of work. And I kind of just pushed it off to the side, and I just kind of kept getting bothered by a friend of mine. And I finally said, look, if I send out a whole group of letters, will you leave me alone? And he said, yeah, I just want to see you do it, see how well it works. And the very first deal that I got was somebody who was selling a house over in off of San Pablo Road. His mom had passed away. He rented the house out. In his words, somebody ruined the place. It needed less than $10,000 worth of work, and the place was worth $220,000. And when I asked him how much he wanted, he said it was him and two brothers. They each wanted $10,000, and they would walk away. So $30,000 to buy a house that was worth $220,000 and needed maybe $10,000 to be fixed up. So I bought it. Now, the only bad thing was this was in Cypress Village, which is a 55 and up community. And it had an $864 a month HOA fee a month. That was why nobody wanted it. And so we bought it. I put my mother-in-law on it, so that way I had a 55 and up person. That was how I was able to do the deal. And I put a lockbox on it, and then I advertised it as is. And I think I tried to sell it for like $150, because I wanted to leave plenty of meat on the bone for somebody to want to buy it from me. And it took about a month and a half. And somebody finally came by and offered me 115, I think is what they offered me. And I said, fine, I'll take it. And I made about $81,000. And the only thing I did was put a lockbox on the door. So that was my first time I made really good money by doing almost nothing, and then I was pretty sold on direct mail marketing. It's pretty good. I mean, that $81,000 is going to pay for some more marketing and then some. So, but it just goes to show, like, even some things that you might not be comfortable with might turn around and make you more money than you would really think about. So that was the first incident where I made a lot of money and was really shocked. Some other ones are just, have really been in the last couple of years where we've and I always say we, I'm always referring to my wife and I because she's a realtor, so we're kind of a team. We are a team, and so when we're looking at houses and stuff, we are starting to get a little bit more risky, where we'll buy a house that has very little margin in it, because I own a construction company and I hire my construction company. I don't do it for free because I own a construction. I hire it just like I would if I didn't own a construction company. So my construction company comes in and does it and makes a profit. Okay. And after that, my real estate investing company is North Florida Property Investors. It makes a profit as well. And then when my wife sells it, she gets a commission. So there's three ways we're making money on these deals. Now, take away the construction company and I'll still buy a house that has a little margin in it, because if it's a little margin, it's better than no margin. And in class, I ask people, would you buy a house that's going to make $5,000 flipping it? And most people will say no. And I tell every one of them to send them to me. Because if I could do one deal, because they call them crappy deals, if I could do one crappy deal a month that makes $5,000, that's $60,000 a year extra that I'll make just on deals that aren't even really that good that people pass on. And then my wife will make another 5 or 6 just in commissions. So there's another $50,000 a year in commissions. So because she's got her foot in the pool as well, I'll go after some deals that maybe I would have normally passed on.
Well, let me ask you this though, Cameron. So a $5,000 deal, is it worth the time and effort that you're putting into making that back? So you tell me. So a $5,000 deal, I don't know what kind of rehab would go into all of that, but when you come out at the end, are you saying, yeah, that was worth the 5,000, or, okay, I made 5,000, but I put a lot of time into it. So like, what's the time valuation with that?
That's a perfect question. What is the time you're putting into the rehab? So the more novice you are, the more time you put into it, then the more experienced you are. If you're novice, you should probably put about 20 hours in a rehab. And I'm not going to go through it and drag it out, but if you counted the time you looked at it, made the offer, met the contractor, checked on the jobs every now and then, met your realtor, staged it and stuff, you're going to have about 20 total hours. So whatever your profit was, divide that by 20. And that was your hourly rate that you were working for. Now, your average for us, if we could do a property that makes 20 grand, that's $1,000 an hour. I'm going to tell you myself, I'm going to put maybe 5 hours, maybe 10 tops if it's difficult into it. So it's different for me because I've done it a lot and I don't really need to see it all the time. I have people I trust. But if you put 20 hours into a house that makes $20,000, you made $1,000 an hour. So if it only made $5,000, you made $250 for your time. So how much time did it take? That's kind of really how you weigh it out. What did I make and how much time did I put into it? That's a question that each investor should really ask themselves. And I think they'll be surprised that, like, when they think, oh, I put way too much time in that, and they go, how much did you make and how much did your time make you, would really be almost, not to say hypocrite, but it'd be like, so you made $500 an hour and said that was, you spent too much time on it. You did really well. That's great. That's kind of how I gauge it, is like, if I'm making $250 an hour, I'll do it all day long. But I also am going to do the ones that make $2,000, $3,000 an hour for the good flips. And where I want to go back to where you were saying was, houses this year that we've done, I've bought 2 houses. My last 2 houses that I bought, I thought we're going to sell for, example, one of them was $175. Is what I thought we would sell it for when it was finished. Fast forward 2 months, I finished it. We put it on the market for $210. Got an offer for $215. The next house we had $189, and so we listed it at $225, and we got an offer at $228. So those houses were going to make next to nothing. I was just doing them to keep busy, keep houses going, just keep things going, and they're going to turn into $40,000 to $50,000 profits.
Wow.
So sometimes you just got to take a chance. And what happens is when you're advanced, like some of the movers and shakers out there have done this so many times, they just constantly, they don't care. They just buy everything. Because like, if you did 20 deals, and I'm not going to say who told me this, but you probably know who it is. If you do 20 deals and 5 of them are bad, then that washes out 5 that were good. Now you still have 10 deals that were good. You know what I mean? And that was somebody who buys them every month, that many a month. And so it makes sense that they're like, they just buy everything because yes, I'm going to get some bad deals, but it's going to get washed out by more good deals. You got to be pretty, into the game if you're going to run that kind of a risk. But the more you get into it, and I'm finding this out, is the riskier I will be. And I'm finding that it's kind of paying off pretty well.
Amazing. These are great stories. This is great stuff for people to learn if they're just getting in the game or they're in the game right now and they didn't know a lot of this stuff, right? Like they can learn from someone like you, Cameron, that's been doing it, still doing it, and is going to keep going. Dee had a great question. I think this was some stuff from before. Dee asked, can you give some red flags on contractors that might take your money and run?
Yeah. And that's something, be careful when you ask for referrals. I've seen some names floating out there that I wouldn't use for different. I'm not saying like contractor, or I'm just saying names in general. People ask for, it could be a plumber, it could be, a company that does anything. And I'll see somebody and I'll go, oh, I know about them, but I'm not going to say stuff. I don't do that. That's not me. But be careful. Just because somebody says a name doesn't really mean that they're good. But some red flags, so you don't get your money taken, is don't give it to them. Don't give them enough money to run off. You might have to give a binder or deposit or whatever you want to call it. And sure, that money is going to be at risk. But do you have a signed contract before you gave that money away? If you do, then at least you have some legal recourse to come back and try to get that money if they ran off. I have heard some stories even lately of some people taking money and running. And I go, well, what's the contract say? And they're like, well, we didn't really sign anything because I knew them from church, or I knew them from this, and we shook hands and I thought that meant something. And these days you need everything in writing. Everything needs to be in writing. And then just don't let them take too much. So if a contractor says your rehab's going to be $50,000, so give me $30,000 and I'll start. What do you need $30,000 for? You need enough money to go buy your materials. It'd be nice if you could hire somebody who could afford to buy the materials without using the money you give them. But our company doesn't need anybody's money to do something. Our capital's fine where we can float and do stuff. And that's how we were able to do so many jobs. But not everybody's like that. Some people are running on a tighter budget and they need some of the cash in order to get the materials. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what they're actually doing. So if a granite company says you have to give me half up front, that's legit, because most of the money for the job is the granite, the material. Same thing with kitchen cabinets, same thing with roofing. So there's certain jobs that will require a bigger deposit. A contractor that wants to do an entire project does not need half the money up front, because they're not ordering cabinets, they're not getting carpet, they're not getting all the things towards the end of the job yet. All they're going to do is demo and then order some building products. And so they don't need these huge deposits. Our company will ask for, it could be 25% up front, it could be 33% up front. That's about the most we ever ask for. It depends on the size of the job. It's a $9,000 job, I'll probably ask for a third up front. If it's a $40,000 job, I'll ask for 25% up front. If it gets into like a $100,000 job, it's going to be broken down a lot less than that. I mean, I'm not going to ask for 25 grand on a $100,000 renovation. I'm going to probably ask for 10 or 15,000 up front. So it's just all got to be relative to what it is that they need to do. So the red flag is when you start hearing, I can't do your job unless you give me money. That's the red flag. Mm-hmm. And I hear people say that all the time. I ask, why did you give it to them? Well, they said if I didn't, they couldn't finish. That was your red flag. So if somebody has to have your money to do anything, then I guess a polite way to put it is they're not running their money well. They're probably not running their business well. I guess
Gotcha.
That's a polite way to put it.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's great advice for people out there that have that situation. So, Dee, great question. And anybody else that has questions for Cameron, we're live. Ask away. We'll make sure we get your question answered. Cameron's here. He's the rehab guy. Rehab. Kevin asks, how do you deal with properties that still have a large mortgage left and not much equity by the owner?
We don't buy too many. So you're talking about going straight to the source, straight to the seller. And we haven't done a whole lot of that. A lot of the stuff we get is through the wholesalers. other investors. And so those houses, it just has a set price. We don't even know if there's a mortgage on it. So if you're going to go straight to the seller who has a big mortgage, if you have to pay that mortgage off for them, I mean, it's just like any other deal. You got to work the numbers and see if it works out. Don't let them make their problems your problems. You're there to do a deal and make money, and they're there to maybe pay off their house. And sometimes it's to have extra money, sometimes it's not. Hopefully the way your problem gets solved helps them solve their problem as well, which means you need to buy a house and make money, and they need to pay off a mortgage and do something else. And you're trying to make it work out. So a lot of people call it the engineering or something like that, that we're, real estate engineers trying to put together all these problems and stuff. And you can get into some creative financing. You can do some owner financing to try to help out. I know a deal that somebody was talking about where they might instead of giving the person all this money and buying the house, they may just, and then being out all this money, because he said it's like a very big purchase. He said maybe that the owner keeps the property, I rehab it, and they kind of partner up. And then when they sell the house, then the guy who owned the house gets the mortgage part of it back, maybe gets a little profit, and then the guy that did all the work keeps the rest and stuff. So I mean, there's we could sit here all day and talk about different ways of being creative and put deals together. But if the numbers don't work, they don't work. Period. No, you can't make them work. Math is math. Okay, we can't reinvent that stuff. 1 + 1 is always going to be 2, no matter how much you like it. You have to stick with it.
Yeah, and we'll make sure that's a quote card. I mean, math is math, right? At the end of the day,
But it's true. It's true. I mean, in the beginning, I would do the math and I would say, "Man, this looks like a great deal. I'm going to go to lunch and I'm going to think about this." And I'm like, "It's still a great deal. I'm going to go home and sleep on it." And I wake up and it's still a great deal. I think I'll do it. And then the deal's gone.
Right.
The math was the math was the math originally. It never changed. It didn't get better. It didn't get worse. So that's why decisions should be made very, very quickly and decisively.
And that makes it a cool deal. If the numbers work and the math works, that's a pretty cool deal, right?
Yeah. The problem is the emotion. In the beginning, there's so much emotion. It's a lot of dollars, a lot more zeros than you're used to dealing with. It's scary. Some people are putting everything, their entire savings into this one flip, and it's scary. And I understand it. I did it all myself. I started with $200 in my name and just borrowed like crazy to get myself where I wanted. And then the first time you ever say, "I'm not going to borrow, I'm going to give every dime I ever worked my butt off, and I'm going to go buy that house so that I don't have to borrow," that's a very scary purchase. And then after you do it a while, the emotion goes right out the window. It's just numbers. It's math.
So Cameron, also, let me ask you this. With the rise in the supplies, the cost for supplies, how does that affect anything with the rehab process?
A lot. Rehabbing has gotten very expensive. And because of that, everybody's using COVID as I don't want to use the word excuse, but that's the reason for everything, whether it's COVID's causing shipping, it's causing lack of labor, it's causing whatever. But there is a real problem. And I'll tell you, just as a business owner, finding helpers, finding workers is the hardest as it's ever been this last 12 months. I've never dealt with anything like this. So a lot of companies are very shorthanded. And if you want to use them, it's going to cost you. A lot of materials are hard to get. They're taking a lot longer. Example would be windows. I just did a house where I ordered windows the day I bought the house. We finished the rehab, we were 2 weeks from being done with the rehab. And I called the window company and said, "Well, when are you going to put the windows in? I'm almost finished." And he said, "You're still looking at another month and a half." And I said, I'll have a contract the first week, a 30-day closing. It'll be sold and gone before you even get the windows here. I canceled the order and sold the house, and the buyers didn't even bring it up. They didn't say anything about new windows. So I saved $3,600 or $4,600 on not putting windows in. But it was like I'm almost to the point where I can't even offer the windows. I almost have to offer a credit to the buyer and explain to them, it's not that we're doing a cheap rehab. We physically cannot get the windows in quick enough to put the house on the market. So appliances is another thing that's kind of becoming a little bit of an issue. And we try to use a lot of materials that aren't special order because of that reason. So our cabinets or flooring is who are vendors that we use? What do you have in stock? And then we pick, something that we like, and we just stick with that until they tell us it's not in stock anymore.
That's interesting. The supply chain and the lack of the supplies and the high prices is almost like altering the kind of rehab you're doing and
Yeah.
what it may look like or the materials you're using, which is you have to be flexible. I can see you think creatively even about adding that. What is that? Adding that cost to the buyer on the rehab if you're having those window issues and stuff. Those are creative things.
I noticed that wood is the big thing that went up for, the last year. Well, wood is starting to come back down now, but what's costing a lot is steel, metal. I'm doing an addition, or I was pricing out an addition. And so I had to, because the lumber companies are so backed up, you used to be able to give them a set of plans and say, do a takeoff, tell me how much it's going to cost to get all the wood for this new construction or addition or whatever. Well, they won't do that now unless you've got 6 to 8 months to wait for that bid. But if you give them a materials list, they'll give you the price within a couple of days. So I've had to do that myself. And I just did one last night, literally. And I was amazed at when I was pricing out the materials. I was just using Lowe's because I want to see the cost comparison with a lumber company. I was amazed at how far off my material template was versus what the cost actually is right now. And I update it every January, so I'm less than a year out. But anything that had metal in it, I was so far off on price. And I'm just talking like strapping and things that go into new construction. But the metal is very, very high right now.
Yeah, I've heard just supplies and everything's just at a high point. But being flexible and learning from people like you, others can learn this stuff and how to maneuver and pivot and find the right things to do.
Yeah.
Henry also said, I started off with amazing credit and leveraged that into 0% interest promotional APR cards to buy my first flip with none of my own money. $40,000 purchase, $21,000 rehab, and sold for $20,000 profit. Huge.
And that's great. And I want to piggyback right off of that because I've heard about this before. Not his deal, but people doing this. The problem is Henry is very what's a good word to use?
The man.
He knows what he knows what he's doing, and he's being honest with himself about what he's doing. A lot of people would go do what Henry did and go, wow, I made all this money. Well, I'm going to pay back half the card so that I have a little extra money. And then they get themselves into this big debt. And then all of a sudden the whole thing snowballs and crashes down on them. Discipline. That's what I want to say. He's very disciplined on what he's doing. And he doesn't deviate from that. He knows what his end objective is, and he sticks to it. I had a student once who did the same thing, where he did his very first deal, and he had a chance to pay off his card, and he came to me and said, I think I want to pay half of it off so that I can do, it was something ridiculous. And I said, but before you did the deal, you said the only thing you wanted to do was if I could just get this credit card paid off. That was so important to you. But once the money was in his hand, it all of a sudden didn't become as important. And that's where, if you're going to do what Henry says, make sure you're going to be disciplined and stick to it. It'll pay off in the end. It may hurt in the beginning to, give up so much funds to get yourself out of these debts and stuff, but it'll pay off. Henry's a good guy. He knows what he's doing.
He does. And he's efficient at what he does too. Yeah. Disciplined and efficient. Henry, you know what you're doing. He also said, we are ordering appliances as soon as we have a contract on a property to ensure they are available in time. My contingency for that would be not installing them and offering an allowance for them in the listing. What are your thoughts?
That's cool that you brought that up, Henry, because I would say about 2 years ago, we stopped putting refrigerators in houses. We haven't sold a house with a refrigerator in 2 years. A refrigerator costs roughly $1,000, $1,200. So if I do 10 houses a year, that's $10,000 extra I make every year by not putting refrigerators in. And it's not an issue. The buyers have not made a big deal about it. The other appliances he's referring to, we do put those in. We wait until the house is almost finished. It's like one of the very last things we do because of theft and stuff. But we do put those appliances in because we want to have a good look when you walk into the kitchen. We want to have a good picture when we have a picture of the kitchen, because we have done them without the appliances and it did not make for a very good, or I should say a very attractive kitchen. I have the vision to see it. Henry has the vision, but does my buyer that come through have the vision to see what a kitchen, when it doesn't have the appliances in it, is going to look like once they're installed? So I haven't done that, but it also depends on where your area is. If you're in a not so great area and theft could be a problem, then you might want to go in that direction. If you're in a place where it's not, then don't worry about it. I just did one in an area, and the AC was there. It wasn't even a new one, and I put a cage around the outside unit just because that $300 or $400 it was going to cost me will save me, $2,500 if I have to put a new one in later.
Fascinating. Yeah, because I remember, I think it was during the middle of the pandemic. I mean, there was people leaving supplies out there and out in the middle, and you got to make sure you're protected from that stuff. Nobody's going to take it.
Yep.
You know,
Right.
do all that stuff. And Henry also said, I reinvested the funds over and over until the promotional 0% APR expired, and then paid them off and did it again with several more rounds of cards. So yeah, Henry was on my show. He talked a lot about that, like how he first started and how he uses the cards to leverage and get deals and use it for the deals.
If it's the plan, he had a plan and he stuck with the plan, and it works, and it will always work. The reason why credit cards are out there is because most people won't pay them off.
Right.
They just won't do it. So if you're disciplined enough, sure, it can be a great asset.
Amazing. Cameron, I gotta say, because I love that we're going back and forth about all these things. This is a great interactive show where people can ask these questions and chime in, like Henry asking these things, Dee asking this stuff. So anybody has any more questions, like keep asking. We love the interaction. I would want more of you to do this on every show, actually, into season 3 next year. Let's start with Cameron. Like keep asking the interactive. We'll have to do like a call in. We'll just get somebody to like appear on the screen, and then we'll have them ask the question at the same time.
Absolutely.
How many of you would like to do that? Appear on the screen and ask Cameron the question. I bet a lot would.
Them all in the air.
I love it. Marvin, and hey, Beth, how you doing, Beth? Marvin asks, even in these times of high price home sales, sticking to the fundamentals on cost will keep you from losing big if the market cools.
Let me read this again. Okay, so everybody wants to know, when's the bubble coming? Okay, biggest question of all, right? And if you want to know about stats on housing, listen to JWB. Those guys know their stats more than anybody I know, and follow what they say. And one of the things that I've always listened and agree with is it comes down to inventory. Inventory is going to tell you what's happening or what's going to happen. And as long as you have low inventory, prices are going to keep going up. You may not think they're going to go. It just went up really high in the last 12 months, so it's bound to stop. It's bound to go down. What's the inventory like right now? It's still low. I mean, it's still low. And so I just sat there and told you like what the last 2 deals I just did and how much more I got, $30,000, $40,000 over what I thought I was going to ask for it only 3 months ago. And a lot of times it's because when we get ready to sell a house, we relook at the comps all over again, just like we did when we decided if we wanted to buy it. And then there's new comps out there. There's other houses that have sold. I'm like, oh, look, this one sold for more than the ones that we were using before. So obviously we're going to go with that. And the market's going to keep going up. So is it going to cool down? Sure, it will. I mean, it's always going to go up. It's always going to go down. Nobody's got that crystal ball to tell you exactly when it's going to happen. You just got to watch your inventory, because when you flip houses, we kind of look at it as a 3 to 4 month project. Every house, we buy it, we get in, we get out, we sell it. We usually have to hit the 90-day seasoning. I've got one right now we listed it, I think, like 13 days before the 90 days is up. So we had to say no FHA for, a couple of weeks or whatever. And then once it hits that 90 days, it's open market for anybody. And then usually we get a contract, within a couple of days. I mean, we ended up getting a conventional on that one. We didn't have to wait the 13 days. So then you do a 30-day closing, and you can dictate these things. You get a contract in and you love it and you go, hey, this is great, 45-day closing. Counter it with, I like everything except I want the 30-day closing, because I want to turn my money as fast as I can. So when we talk about the market going up and down, I'm in and out pretty quick. So it's not like I'm going to buy a house and, oh my gosh, I lost half my equity in the house. It's never going to happen. Worst case scenario is it doesn't really go anywhere, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it goes down a little bit, and instead of making 20 like I thought, I made 0 because I lost the 20. That's kind of my worst case scenario. I don't really look at a deal and think I'm going to lose money because of what the market's going to do. I just don't. but I do watch it. I do pay attention to it to make decisions on how aggressive I want to be, or I know how many houses I can buy at one time. Do I want all that money out at one time? Do I want to kind of scale it back? Because when this COVID hit, everybody made some pretty strange decisions, and my wife came up and said, "Buy everything you can get your hands on," and I said, "You're crazy." And I listened to her because that's the right thing to do as a husband. And we bought, and I literally took every dime I had and put it out there and bought houses. And I had some pretty big players selling me houses who will now tell you I probably left millions of dollars on the table because I was trying to liquidate everything. And we didn't. We did the opposite. We just bought, bought, bought. And look what the market ended up doing. It just went straight up. So I can't answer a question on what to do and when it's going to happen. Just be prepared and don't put yourself in a situation that's going to do something really bad.
Well, a company that did put themselves in that kind of situation, buying too much, was Zillow, and they were doing the fix and flip stuff, right? They were doing it. So like,
I was going to do their rehabs for them. Okay. It took me
oh
over a
wow,
year to get in with them. And I went to the first house. They were so unorganized. It was a train wreck. And I just said, I never did anything. I always said, I'm not doing it. They did not have their stuff together. And I knew eventually something bad was going to go down with that.
yeah. I'm Marvin said, wow, I'm even wowed. I mean, that's amazing. It's like, oh wait, right? Like when the people on the ground saw what was going on with the houses and like everything was up for sale and it was just, you knew the market was going down. Same thing. You saw it on the ground level. You walked into that rehab and you're like,
They thought it was going to go down. My wife, for some reason, as a realtor, just saw a different picture and she wanted me to risk it. And so I reluctantly did, and it was the right decision. But it could have easily been the wrong decision. We don't know. It's just, what is your level of risk? It's no different than if you were going out and buying mutual funds and stocks. Do you want something aggressive or don't you? Your age is going to have something to do with it, or your temperament's going to have something to do with it. It all depends. We're all different. And so that was one of those that, we missed out on a lot of opportunities, and we're going to take that chance and just see what happens. And it just worked out.
So now that they're out of the market, is it create better opportunities for people that want to do the fix and flipping?
So the bad thing right now is the moratorium, and can't get the evictions and the foreclosures. And I know that that's all in process of starting to pick back up, and it will. It's going to take some time, which is inventory. It's all about the inventory. It's going to put more inventory out there. Right now, the inventory is very low, and what's hurting the investors, the private investors, people like me, and the individuals, is the hedge funds. I mean, to be honest with you, they're the one. As a construction company, I love them because they're high volume. As an investor, I don't like them because they're taking up all the deals, and they're offering so much money, like Zillow was. They're offering so much money that we can't match these prices, and the wholesalers. I had a guy ask me or tell me one time, why would I want to sell 100 houses to 100 people when I can sell 100 houses to one company? So they weren't interested in all these investors buying houses, because I said, oh, you're not being fair to the investors. We're the ones that got you where you are. And he said, but I'd have to find 100 of you to sell these 100 houses to, or I can just make one phone call.
Crazy.
And sell it to one person. So they'll take a smaller margin because they're doing more volume. It's just a kind of a process that, how long are the hedge funds going to be here? We don't know. They came in hot and heavy in 07, 08, and they were here for a few years, and then they kind of died off. Now they came right back. And so it's they come and go just like anything else. The individual investors has just got to ride these waves. You literally just stay on the wave and just hang on sometimes. And then when a good wave comes, jump on the board and see what happens.
And right away, right? There you go.
Right until you fall off.
Henry also said our current absorption rate inventory for NEFAR, Northeast Florida, is still low, even though it's up a little bit at less than 1.6 months of inventory. Crazy.
That's just crazy. It's been like that for a long time now. It's funny because people are going, well, new construction's blowing up, which it is blowing up like I've never seen. And it's because of that. They are able to fill that niche. There's no inventory out there. So they're going to fill that inventory gap. It's not going to be used homes for sale. It's going to be new homes for sale. And then once the new construction, this is my opinion now, I'm no crystal ball. I think that when new construction fills that gap, and if the foreclosures and stuff fill that gap, then that's when everything will start leveling off. And that's when everybody will have to new construction will have to die down a little bit, and the investors will start jumping back in and getting more things done. And it'll all work itself out and get back to, I guess we could call it normal. And then something else will happen one day and things will go in a different direction.
Another thing will happen. The market will go up.
It'll be another wave. It'll just be another wave.
Yeah, we'll be on the wave. We'll make sure we catch that wave. Cameron,
Always.
before we wrap up the whole episode, I had one other question. You brought up something interesting with the deals that you were finding earlier that we were talking about. How important is the due diligence process with title, about the HOAs, knowing what kind of area it's in? How important is all of those factors into getting into the rehab process?
It's really important. And one of the things is depends on how you're buying houses. So if you're going to go straight to the source, like somebody had mentioned earlier about, somebody had too big of a mortgage, you have a lot of due diligence if you're going to go straight to the seller. If you're going to use a wholesaler or a realtor or somebody, a lot of the due diligence is already done. They're selling you a house with clear title. They're selling you a house that's vacant. You don't have to worry about these liens and stuff like that. So it's one of the ways I buy most of my houses. And that's kind of one of the reasons I maybe call it lazy. I don't want to do all that due diligence. But if a deal comes to my desk and somebody says, hey, I got a friend across the street, I'll do it. I'll go do my homework and I'll check it out. But that's really, to sum it up, is if you're going to go that route and you're going to go to the source, you are going to have to do more work. The benefit is you're going to make a lot more money, because there's no third party, there's no wholesaler. So a wholesaler sells me a house, he might make $20,000 on that deal, and then I'm going to turn around and make 20. Whereas if you'd have went straight to the source, you could have had the 40 yourself. And then
Gotcha.
therein lies the thing we talked about earlier, your time and how many hours did you put into it. Well, if you put more time into it, you made $40,000. It was worth the time, and you probably made $2,000-3,000 an hour for your time. And what's wrong with that? Sure, I'll do that. And so will a lot of other people. So yeah, the more homework you have to do usually should mean the more money you're going to make. If you're doing a lot of work and you're not making much money, you're probably looking at the wrong houses or the wrong areas.
And you're spinning your wheels because,
Yeah.
you finding out those things like the HOA, like what it was going to be monthly and what title looks like is really important. Making sure it's not just a mortgage and not just one mortgage. Finding out there's like another mortgage. Is it going to kill the deal? Is it going to be worth doing all of this work? Finding out all of this stuff, and it probably affects all the funding and the lending side to things too.
Some people find a niche. I got a friend that does nothing but mobile homes, and he does like Callahan or Hilliard and stuff, and he flips them. And he says he has almost nobody to compete against him. And that's just the niche that he took. And so he's doing really good at it. So, if you do something and you do it really well, maybe you want to do it again. And maybe that's your thing, and stick to what you're good at. Don't try to go out and do everything. Do something really good, then maybe go out and do something else that's really good, then go out and do something else that's really good. And then before you know it, you're doing, rentals and flips, and you're lending money, and, you're doing all these different facets of real estate investing.
Cameron, I don't think we could have timed this episode in any other perfect way. This has been a great episode with a ton of information and value. Anybody has any final questions for Cameron before we wrap it up? Ask away. Cameron, we're going to make sure we put up all your info on the bottom of the screen so they know where to find you, your company, and everything. Who are you looking for to connect with you and reach out to you, to work with you? Like who are those people, so that if they're interested and they want to connect with you, what are you looking for? Like, what's that next project, that next step?
Well, there's several things because we own different companies. So as Suncoast Renovations, the construction company, we always are rehabbing houses for other investors. A lot of people think that I don't do that I only flip my own houses, and my own house is a very small portion of the amount of business that we do. So we flip houses for other investors. So if anybody needs anything like that done, definitely let me know. As North Florida property investors, we're always looking for deals to buy. As everybody says, we pay cash fast and all that good stuff. And as Freedom Builders USA, I saw you put that up there. That's not actually a construction company. That's actually my education business, where I travel and speak and do mentoring and stuff like that. So if there's anybody, or anybody who's kind of looking for somebody to team up with, to do some mentoring, JV deals and things like that, you can also look me up that way. and I can help out. So just different things that we try to do to help people out. We don't really push ourselves on anybody. We're just here if they want us.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, you're always getting out there. You're at Jack's Ria and speaking at these events. So it's been a great experience, I'm sure, for you. Cameron, final words, final thoughts before we conclude.
Gosh, final thing. And I always feel like I'm speaking to newbies because most of my speaking things are. So this nothing against anybody that's been doing it a while, but just for newbies is just don't let the fear hold you back. You're going to be afraid. Okay. It doesn't matter how many classes you take, how many books you read. It doesn't matter what you do. You're going to be afraid. The fear goes away after you start doing a few deals. For me, it was after about 5 deals. I lost the fear. It just became, a numbers thing, as I always say. Don't let the fear hold you back, and don't let the money hold you back. Those are the 2 things that I constantly hear people say. And it's, and then when you get started, you're always going to go, I should have started sooner. I should have done this earlier. I don't know what I was waiting on. I thought this, I thought that. You just got to get out there and do it. It doesn't happen if you don't. But once you do, and you get that ball rolling downhill, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so does the money. So
great.
Get in as soon as you can.
Get in. There's no better time to start and learn. You're going to learn and take it from somebody like Cameron Gaskill that's been doing it, does it. He's got all the tools to help you if you want to get involved in JV and partner and succeed and get to that next level. So connect with Cameron. Cameron, thank you so much again for coming on. So happy to have you on my show. So everybody's going to take a lot from it. And let me just say before we wrap up, thank you everybody for contributing. Henry, D, Marvin, let's get more interaction. We love that on the Al Nicoletti Show, is having people interact, and we'll put your questions up there, your comments up there. We love that stuff, and make sure we'll do that for season 3 with more interactions. And again, Cameron, thank you so much for being on. Loved it. I'll see you soon at a Jack's Ria event or speaking event near you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And listen, I hope we get to do this again. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
You got it. We'll bring you back in person. When I start doing the in-person, we'll turn the table around and have the mic here, and it'll probably be like a Joe Rogan 3-hour session because it's so much to talk about. I mean, there's so much, right?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. There's definitely a lot to it, but it's a lot of fun.
Good. I'll see you soon, Cameron. Thank you so much again.
Take care, and thanks everybody. I appreciate it. I hope everybody has a good one.
You got it. Wow, what a jam-packed episode. I mean, we could have gone on for another 2 hours. And like Cameron was saying at the end, we got to do this again. We're going to make sure we turn the table around in the Al Nicoletti studio and make sure we have him in person and get down to some stories, more stories. And we'll do like an update. We'll find out where he's been with all the supply chains and all the appliances and inventories that have been happening. Crazy stuff with Zillow too. So make sure you rewind and go back to hear all these great comments and questions from the audience. And let me just say, I still see people watching. I love the interaction. I don't know, this episode all of a sudden with like a lot of interaction, this has been great stuff. Like D, Marvin, Henry, thank you so much for participating. We got one more episode before we conclude season 2, but I want to make sure you all know I love this stuff. I love when you're participating. We want to put you on the screen. Hey, maybe eventually we'll put you like literally on the screen, but we want to make sure you're up there. Thank you, D. Love it. I love the probate stuff. But thank you all so much for watching. And make sure you check out all the amazing past guests that have been on the Al Nicoletti Show. You can find it on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify under the Al Nicoletti Show, and find out all the amazing content on probate, partitions, quiet title, the weird and different stuff. And there's tons of content out there, so make sure you check it out. And I will see you next week for the last episode of season 2 on the Al Nicoletti Show, and I'll see you next week.